what you're suggesting, if I understand it correctly, is to be very cautious about further fiscal stimulus. I don't know why this brings to mind the definition of a bartender who is a pharmacist with a limited inventory. I mean, we really have very few options, in a sense, at this stage of the game, given what we've been through, both in fiscal policy and monetary policy, and that impulse to do something, your suggestion, could be counterproductive.
I think that what we have to do is keep an open mind on what the facts show. I mean, this is a highly politicized, sensitive issue. I mean, for example, I've been strongly in favor of closing the deficit as quickly as we can, because I think deficit problem is a much more dangerous issue. I don't think we have time to wait. So I'm coming out in favor, for the first time in my memory, of raising taxes. And the reason I'm doing that is essentially that I think that we're getting to the point at this stage that unless we come to grips with the deficit problem very quickly, that we're fooling ourselves about how much time we have. And I would love to see taxes go down, and I would hope that what we could do is, if we allow the tax cuts, the so-called Bush tax cuts, all to lapse, as they will, of course, legally on December the 31st, and then gradually bring the level of expenditures down, which is it's not a question of affordability, it's that we are committing more in the way of real resources in the public sector than we have. And unless we start to do that and then bring taxes down, or the way I put it, we should not have tax cuts with borrowed money, but we should have tax cuts. And the more, as far as I'm concerned, the better, but only in the context of bringing the deficit down, because unless we do that, I think we have very grave problems ahead. And none of the issues we're discussing this morning will get solved.
There's a widespread feeling in the business community of a lack of confidence in this administration. It really does have an effect on the decision-making process. In part, I guess, because the economic consequences of the fiscal stimulus and the monetary stimulus have been so limited. There is a sense that these issues get politicized. What would you recommend, just on the intangible level of confidence? How would you suggest an administration sort of rebuild that confidence in the business community?
Well, I think that this president can do that. I think he is very clearly highly intelligent, as best I can judge, and he understands issues, and I think that politically, obviously, it's very difficult for him to turn, but I think it's feasible. In fact, I think it's necessary.
Well, one of the issues that we have in this country is certainly that intellectual capital is at least as important as financial capital in a world of very rapidly changing technology. We have reduced the number of H-1B visas from 195,000 in the year 2000 down to 65,000 today. Now, we are sending roughly 50% of the graduate students, MAs and PhDs in the hard sciences are foreign students. Other countries are going around setting up offices around the world to recruit these people. We're sending them back to their home countries where they can compete with us, either from the countries or from companies in those countries. What should we do on something like that?
Well, I think, strangely enough, going back to your previous question, one way for the president to get started would be to press very hard to, I would say, lift the H-1B and require quotas, and essentially argue that anyone who gets, say, a PhD in the hard sciences gets a green card or something like that. The problem that we have is a very difficult political one, but it's not the self-evident one. It's the fact that that issue, which I think the majority of Americans, and I think the electorate, would approve of. In other words, if you don't have the skills that coming through our educational system at home, you import them. And indeed, we've seen an extraordinary proportion of the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley are foreign-born. The problem that we have is that they have two separate immigration problems. They really are distinct. One is the illegal immigration, heavily dominated by those with less than a high school diploma, and the H-1B, heavily dominated with PhDs and advanced degrees and a wide variety of skills that we need here. These are two separate problems. Both are important. As I've argued, I'm strongly in favor of immigration. I think that, I don't know how you get the illegal immigrants out, but I bet you if we ever try to get them out, everyone would start screaming because nothing was going, all the work that they do would not happen. So I would like to see us solve that problem. But the point of the issue is that these are two separate immigration problems. We put the same name on them, they go into the same bill, and I think we have to decouple, if I may use the term everyone's using.
There is going to be a lot of pressure, political pressure, for another stimulus program. It certainly isn't a dialogue going on now between, is the employment structural or is it cyclical? Will a stimulus program help the employment issue? Martin Wolf, a well-known economics writer for the Financial Times, described the last stimulus program as basically being too small, too wasteful, and too ill-focused. So that a lot of that stimulus was not stimulating. And frankly, I think there were so many different programs put into that package, transfer payments, alternative minimum tax, things that really were not directed specifically to increasing employment. If you had a stimulus program, in a sense, almost as a political a part of a package that would be political, what kind of stimulus program would you recommend?
Long-term infrastructure assets, because under current conditions, those are precisely the types of things which the free markets will not give you, because the discount rates are much too high and will remain much too high so long as there is a sense of malaise out there. So government stimulus, if it were put into the longer-term infrastructure assets, would not be displacing the private sector so much, because they're already displaced in that regard.